Frank Show, what? The Frank Show, come on, the Frank Show, what? The Frank Show, come on, the Frank Show, what? The Frank Show, come on, the Frank Show. It's time for the show.
Right. You're probably wondering where Frank is. We're wondering the same thing. We've got some rumors about where Frank might be. I got a scribbled note. Epics, can you help out? Guest host a couple of episodes. I'll be back. I just need somebody to hold down the fort while I'm away. Like I said, we've got some ideas. We know he's going to be back. Happy to help. I'm here. Frank will be back. Soon as we know where he is, we'll let you know. Now, my name is Epics, and like Frank, I host a VR YouTube channel. It's called The VR Show. Deals with VR gaming, VR news, current events, all platforms. And like Frank, I love my PlayStation VR. In fact, if I had to do the deserted island scenario where you can take, just a couple things with you, and it could only be one VR system, it would likely be my PlayStation VR. Games like Resident Evil 7, a game that single-handedly desensitized me from horror movies. I don't even get an increase in heart rate watching them thanks to that damn game. Astrobot, Skyrim VR, which could keep you busy for pretty much ever, etc. But I want to start things off, guys, with the cynical bunch, right? We all know them. You've come across them. They might be friends. They might be family. They want VR. Well, mostly they like it playing at your place, but they don't want to shell out for it themselves, right? Different reasons. Oh, it's not cheap enough yet, Epics. I'm waiting for second generation. That one I don't get, because why would you deprive yourself of all the gaming goodness that can be had with VR right now? There is no better time. Anyways, those people, show them these deals, especially if you're in Europe. Sony releasing a bundle called the Mega Pack Bundle. This thing has 5 titles in it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Epic's great, but how are they? Well, let's take a look at some of these titles. We have Astrobot Rescue Mission, Skyrim VR, a game that can single-handedly see you through the entire holiday season without spending another penny. Doom VFR, another fantastic title. Wipeout, the Omega Collection, and PlayStation VR Worlds. Now, that last one you might say, Epics, we've seen it bundled before. It's okay, but it's, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. But those other 4 titles, those are pretty damn solid. And like I said, more than enough to keep you busy without ever having to spend another dime throughout the holiday season. You'd be into January before you had to buy anything else with Skyrim alone, and you've got some other fantastic titles in it. Now, that's 330 euros in Europe only. All right. Does that mean we're out of luck elsewhere for that bundle? Unfortunately, yes, but there's a North American bundle, and hopefully some really good Asian bundles will come along too. But this North American bundle comes with Borderlands 2 VR and Beat Saber. Now, like Skyrim, Borderlands 2, a game you could spend 100 plus hours on easily. So 2 quality titles, everything else that you need for virtual reality, your cameras, your Move controllers, the head-mounted display, and of course, those 2 games and the camera for tracking. That bundle gets released December 14th, so just about a week away. Canada, $449 Canadian, US $349 US, which is just an absolute fantastic deal. Now, on the topic of games, there were a couple of award shows over the last week. The first one was an award show in Asia, and it was the PlayStation Awards. Lots of different categories, lots of gaming categories that have to do with the PlayStation gaming ecosphere, right? Your best directors, your best games, all of that, but a VR category. Actually, the second year that they've had a VR category. Now, it's not a best VR game type category. We'll get to that in the next award show that I'll talk about. Rather, it's 3 titles that did more than any other VR games to push virtual reality purchases for PlayStation VR within the continent of Asia. So in 2017, the 3 titles that got that award, Resident Evil 7, Farpoint, and a game called Summer Lessons. You might be asking, Epics, the hell Summer Lessons? Haven't heard of that title before for good reason. It never made it out of Asia. And it's a dating simulator. Now, just because those haven't been too popular here to now doesn't mean that they won't be moving forward. In fact, that title is going to get English localization and subtitles over the next few months and get released over on this side of the equation. Now, this year, the 3 titles in question, some damn good titles. We've got Skyrim VR, Gran Turismo, and No Heroes Allowed. The other award show is the Game Awards show. So this one was started in 2014, usually takes place at the Microsoft Theater. It did again this year over in LA, and it deals with everything and anything gaming related. Your best directors, writers, art style, genres, RPGs, all of that, and of course, a best VR AR game category. Now, the nominees this year, an interesting bunch, probably pretty predictable. Astrobot was in there, Beat Saber, Firewall Zero Hour, Moss, and Tetris Effect. Now, you probably know without me even having to say it, the winner, Astrobot Rescue Mission, which doesn't surprise me at all. Just what an absolute fantastic game that takes a tried and true genre like a platformer and just reinvents it, much like Mario 64 did back on the N64, versus kind of the SNES versions of the game. This does it again, but in virtual reality. So congrats to Astrobot, of course, Sony Studios behind that game, for that win. Now, at the start, I talked about cynics, and it's one thing to want VR, but to not have taken the plunge yet, right? What about the cynics we come across, again, friends, family, that are just completely against virtual reality, right? The heavy crowd with the, it's like 3D TV, which it isn't, but that one drives me absolutely bonkers. It's gonna fail. It's a fad. It's just, it's a thing that's dying out. Sales aren't great. Okay. You might want to show them the results for actual virtual reality sales across all platforms 2018 versus the previous year. So there was a report that looked at sales for the third quarter in 2017. So that is the first 3 months of the second half of the year versus that same period in 2018, which just ended. 8% increase, which is high single digits, fantastic result. But when you look at the actual numbers for the platforms, 300,000 for the Oculus Rift, 230,000 for the Vive. You want to know what the PlayStation VR did? 463,000 in sales, essentially 500,000 units within 3 months, which is absolutely fantastic. Congrats to Sony for those sales. VR dying? Hell no. The only place that VR is going is up. Proof positive in those numbers. That's what you show them. Switch things up a little bit. Let's take a look at some of the gaming in and around PlayStation VR. I want to start with a title that Frank talked about on a news show a couple of weeks ago, just a little over a week ago, Red Matter. So this is an adventure game / puzzler with a pretty cool story that ties those two elements together, and it does it in a really cool way. Now, if it sounded kind of appealing, but you hadn't seen enough of the game, he's also put up, Frank has a video of gameplay for that game. Go check that video out. That might help you decide if it's the game for you. I know I love that game. Lots of enjoyment there. As well, as this next title. Now, one of the things that scares the absolute bejesus out of me, and there's actually two fears kind of bundled into one here, is open heights, right? If you live in a high-rise downtown, epics, come on over, let's grab a brewski and chat on the 20th floor balcony, leaning over the railing. Hell's no, not going to happen. I will not be standing there. I might crawl there, but I don't think physically I could actually stand up. I'd have that weak-kneed feeling. I am terrified of heights that are open. The second fear, well, it's coming down from said heights in an unsafe manner, if you catch my drift, i.e. at terminal velocity and then meeting the ground head on. Not a fan of the concept of that at all, something I try to avoid, right? And yet, I will line up for theme park rides. You've all seen those, right? The salt and pepper shakers, or how about that slingshot ride, the one that you sit in, you get the harness over the shoulder, it shoots you into the sky like rocket speed, 3, 4, who knows how many hundreds of feet up, way too high, and then drops you into a free fall before catching you before you hit the bottom. I'll line up for that all day long too, but that's all controlled. What about something where you could have negative consequences? They don't hurt you, but it's just that much more realistic. That's the beauty of VR and the beauty of this title. It's called Rush. It's a wingsuit racer. Now, I've got a viewer over on my channel who actually built himself a wingsuit simulator for this game on the non-PlayStation VR platforms. Well, this is coming to PlayStation VR, out already by the time you see this, and deals with my two big fears within the same game. Because you start out at the top of a mountain and basically hurtle yourself down at terminal velocity to get to the finish line while avoiding trees, rocks, cliffs, chasms, whatever. You got to avoid it to get down. 4 different environments, 90 different tracks, multiple ways to actually get down. There's leaderboards. You can race with your buddies. There are times where you're literally inches away from certain doom on your way down. So if that's kind of your bag, check that out. Again, that title, Rush, Prison Boss VR. Another title like Red Matter, which Frank did some gameplay footage on. Check out that video. In this, you're essentially a prisoner working your way up to becoming the prison boss. That means avoiding everything associated with being in a prison. You're avoiding guards, feds, other inmates, gangs, all of that to get to the top. And remember, everyone that you passed getting up to the top is waiting for you should you fall from the top. So you want to make sure it's a one-way trip. So check that out. That's Prison Boss VR. It's got a real cartoony style, but I love that because those are usually very performance-friendly, and those types of games tend to age really, really well. So check that out, Prison Boss VR. What about those years when you were actually a baby? You want to ever relive those? If you do, you might want to check out the upcoming PlayStation VR game, Baby Hands. There's no release date yet, no real word of when it's going to release. We'll let you know as we find out. But in this, you play the role of a baby, and that includes all the obstacles an actual baby would have to deal with. Various toys, pens, fences, safety harnesses, food, and a bunch of stuff adults don't want you getting into. So that is called Baby Hands. That'll be coming our way, hopefully sometime in early 2019. Again, we'll let you know as we find out. And I want to end things with a game which, very much like Skyrim VR, can offer you more than enough gaming for the entire holiday season, especially if you played, a non-VR game like Red Dead Redemption 2. You want something similar, Borderlands 2 VR. Now, earlier we talked about the bundle, but you can also purchase the game on its own. That's going to be out within the next few days. And holy Hannah, does it have a lot of gaming goodness in it. Again, it also has a bit of a cel-shaded kind of cartoon style, ages well, performance runs really well. You can kind of barrel through the storyline if you want to be done within, a couple dozen hours. But if you are a completionist, you love grinding, there are so many items, armor, weapons, skill ups that you can do. You could easily spend 100 plus hours and you'd only be scratching the surface. Now, again, if you're waiting for a great VR deal, Borderlands 2 was one of those games that you wanted, and you're in Europe, check out that bundle that I talked about at the start of the show. Rather than purchasing the game on its own, you get all of that, plus everything you need to play more titles. Well, guys, that's the end of this Frank Show episode. Again, we will find Frank. He will be back. This is just temporary, so I appreciate you guys allowing me to jump in, share the news and gaming with you. As I say on my channel, cheers, but let's add something to that. As always, cheers, headsets. Till next time.
Monday through Friday.
Frank Show.
Monday through Friday.
Frank Show. Body on YouTube, body on Frank Show, body on YouTube, body on Frank Show. And that's how you do an outro. I know what else to do.